Hello, and I wanted to give you some examples on a video for how to do the division that we've been practicing in class using the area model or using place value. Because the place value is what is the fourth grade standard, not the division facts. So separating out the equation into the place value really helps us understand place value better as we move through these problems. So I wanted to start off with a fairly simple one, and then we'll work into the more complicated ones. So I've got 824 divided by 2, which we could probably do in our head really quickly. But again, we want to practice the easy problems and learn the strategy before we get to the more challenging ones. So I've set up the table, and in the process of using the computer, I had to make a more elaborate table than what we've been doing in class. This section here is pretty much what we have in class. But in order to fit it all in where I wanted to on the computer, I need to set up a little bit more elaborate one. So bear with me. So I've got the 2 outside the box. This is normally the rectangle that we draw when we're doing it in class. So let me use a little color there. That's what we normally have. So I've taken 824, 824. Okay. So now I'm going to see how many hundreds can I multiply 2 by to get to 800 or close to 800. And because we're starting out with a basic one, I can see my basic fact is 2 times something gets me 8. 2 times what gets me 8? 2, 4, 6, 8. 4. And since I'm not doing 2 times 8, I'm actually doing 2 times 8, or 2 times 4. I'm doing 2 times 400 because it is in the hundreds place. Okay, so now 400 times 2 is 800. I'm going to subtract those, and I'm going to end up with 0, which means I have nothing to regroup over here. Now I've got 2. How many tens can I multiply 2 by to get 20? How many tens can I multiply 2 by to get 20? 110. 10 times 2 is 20. So I'm going to subtract 20 here, and I'm going to end up with 0, which means I have nothing to regroup. 2 times what was 4? 2 times 2 is 4. And that makes 400 plus 10 plus 2, which equals 412. Okay, so this one we can figure out pretty simply if we wanted to with our standard algorithm, because there isn't any regrouping in this problem, and you can see a basic fact. 2 goes into 8, 2 goes into 2, and 2 goes into 4 evenly with no problems there. So this is a simple version of the area model that we've been doing. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit more complicated. 164 divided by 4. So here I've set up 164 and 4 outside. And again, this is a little bit more elaborate than the one we've done in class. This box right there is what we've done in class. Now, how many hundreds do I need to multiply 4 by to get 100? Well, the smallest hundred I could multiply would be 100. And if I do this, 100 times 4 is 400. If I have 100, can I take away 400 from that? No. So that tells me my first place value is going to be a 0. 0 times 4 is 0, so I'm going to subtract 0 from there. I'm going to have 100 left over. So I'm going to regroup this 100, and I'm going to have 160 tens. Now I have a basic fact. 4 times how many tens will get me 160? Well, 4 times 4 is 16. So 4 times 40 would be 160. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 40 is 160. 160 subtract 160 is 0, which means I have nothing to regroup over here. But that's okay, because 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 4 is 4. I subtract. I have no remainder. Okay. Last one for right now. Get a little more complicated here. 375 divided by 5. So here's my box that we've been doing. 300, I've just separated out 375 into expanded form. 375. So each one has its own place value. And again, the smallest I could do in the hundreds place would be 100. But 100 times 5 is 500. And that's too great to subtract. I can't have 300 of something and take 500 away from it, because we're not doing negative numbers yet. So that means this has to be 0. 0 times 5 is 0. When I subtract 0 from 300, I get 300, which I have to then regroup, and I don't have 70 tens, I have 37 tens, or 370. Now this is not a basic fact. You can see 35 and 37 is not a multiple of 5. So this one's going to get a little bit more complicated. I need to count by 5s and see how close I can get to 37. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. 40 is too big, so I have to go back to 35. And if I count, I'm going to get 7. But 7 times 5 is 35. So 70 times 5 is not 370, but 350. Okay, now I'm going to subtract that. 370 minus 350, 0 take away 0 is 0. 7 take away 5 is 2. 3 take away 3 is 0. So I've got 20, and I'm going to regroup that 2 tens and make 25 ones. That's a little bit more complicated. Replay the video, rewind and replay if you need to. Now I've got 5 and 25. 5 times, what is 25? Hopefully you said 5 times 5 is 25. So now I've got 0 hundreds, 70 tens, or 70 in the tens place, 70 in the tens place, and 5 in the ones place. So I've got 70 plus 5, which equals 75. And I forgot to do that for this one. Sorry. I have 0 hundreds, 4 tens, and 1. So that equals 41. Okay, so in these 3 examples I gave you, I did not do any with remainders. You shouldn't be having remainders in your work in the book, but if we happen to end up with something, what would happen is when you subtracted here, you do 5 times 5 is 25. And you should always, when you're doing your book work, you should always end up with 0 here. If you happen to end up with a number here and it's not 0, that would simply be your remainder, just in case you happen to see that. But it should not be happening to you. If you do have that happen, I would strongly encourage you to go back and multiply to check. So let me remind you about the multiplication to check your division. So let's check our division here. I'm going to take 75, which was my, 75, which was my, I'm writing in white. Which was my product, quotient. I'm going to multiply it by 5. And then I should get 375. That's how I'm going to multiply to check the division. Okay. If you end up getting a remainder on the book work, I'd suggest that you do this because you may have made mistakes somewhere in there. All right, I hope this helps you get your work done.